Linguistic relativity is another theory or a way to understand the relationship between thought, language, and the reality in the outer world. It primarily focuses on the relationship between how we think and what language we use. It basically started in the domains of linguistics and anthropology, but now it is being used by all major disciplines of contemporary knowledges. Primarily because of the reason, because it provides us an explanation of a common human experience dealing with different languages. Especially the translators can feel its need greater than other disciplines. When they translate from one language to another, they find that the words available in different languages may not be a good fit or useful fit for each other. For example, color terms, uh, they are used in all languages probably, but they mean different uh, to the listeners or the users, or especially the multilingual users. For example, the word yellow may have a different connotation to a second language user as compared to the words which are available in our own native languages. For example, pila. So pila is slightly may not generate that mental conceptualization as does the yellow. There is always a slight difference, or sometimes this difference may not be of serious nature and may only be of affective nature. But we do feel that there is always certain difference. Same differences can be found in food items. For example, we got a certain food which is called a sweet dish, and the same sweet dish is found differently in other cultures. There are certain foods which do not have their equivalents in other languages. For example, we have a food which is used as a breakfast in typical Pakistani culture. We call it halwa puri, but this halwa puri has no equivalent in English language, and if it does have, that does not generate that impact which this very word halwa puri has. Similarly, the word jalebi do not have any recognizable equivalent in other languages. So there are many terms which are very specific to the cultures, and because of that, we do not find some mutually acceptable or some highly acceptable equivalents in other languages, and that leads us to believe that there is always something missing in the translation. The fact that languages mirror cultural differences, uh, it makes us believe that uh, our thoughts are always influenced by the languages we use, because languages are loaded by the cultural backgrounds of its speakers. Uh, and this theory has been proposed by various scholars, and they believe that thoughts are determined by the categories available to them in the language. Bose, who was probably a predecessor to Sapir and Wolf, he suggests that different languages, reflecting their speakers' cultural practices, might embody different conceptual classifications of the world. So different languages, because they reflect different cultural experiences of their users, they embody different worlds behind them, and that definitely have an impact on the thinking or thinking patterns of its users. It it triggers a very strong debate about the relationship between language, culture, and thought, and we could question that does language determines thought, or language is determined by the thought. Sapir proposed that the particular language we speak conditions our conceptualizations, as I've already argued, that many people believe that languages are the carriers of the culture as well. Therefore, we are tempted to argue that they actually determine or condition our thoughts, because we have to think in the way our languages support us based on the cultural background of these languages. Wolff also strengthened this view and led us to believe in the same point of view and named this view as linguistic relativity. Its basic premise is that the way we think about the world is determined by our culture and linguistic background. So how we look at the world is actually has on its background our linguistic and cultural thinking or way of behaving also. His observation is not restricted to word meaning but also the grammatical meanings, how we construct our sentences, how we find nouns or convert them into verbs, etc. All those grammatical features, they do have an impact on the way we think about the world. Our own languages predisposes us to see both reality and other languages through its own filter. So we look at the world around us and other languages which we confront for the sake of communication or for other academic or social or intellectual reasons. We judge those languages based on the filter which has been created in our minds by our own language and cultural background. This would have serious implications for the prospects of a universal semantic theory, in which we could find a view in which we can develop meanings for all languages. It might mean that we could always, with some difficulty and inexactitude, translate from one language to another. This creates an opening, a possibility to translate from one language to another. But we should always keep in mind that this translation or this shift from one language to another may not always provide the sameness of the meaning.